Hello, everyone. Eric and Kim here. We are going to review The Matrix Resurrections, the long-awaited, 18-year-awaited fourth Matrix movie. This will be a non-spoiler review, so we will only talk about information that is in the trailers or materials promoting the movie. We won't talk about any specific twists and turns, so don't worry about that. I'll just do a very quick plot setup again, kind of being vague about it, but to say that Neo is back, but we meet him in a strange situation where he is got an office job. He has a partner played by Jonathan Groff. He's got a therapist played by Neil Patrick Harris there. But of course, we know there's more to this that's going on, and he will be pulled back into some new adventures by a couple new characters, newish. Jessica Henwick as Bugs, brand new, and then Morpheus, now played by Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. I always hope I'm pronouncing his first name right. The movie will answer your questions about what's going on with the different Morpheus. But of course, also Trinity is there. They don't know each other, but she's there. That's all I'm going to say about the basic plot setup that is in those previews as well. Kim, you are a Matrix expert. You know a lot about these movies. As we'll talk a little bit more about. You've literally written a book on it.
Literally
written very literally. That's right. Why we love the Matrix. We're going to put the link to that in the description. But what were your thoughts? I'm so curious. Your thoughts after I first saw this movie. I was like, I wonder what Kim thought of this, of the Matrix Resurrections.
Well, first of all, you very, very kindly call me an expert. I feel like the more that I learn and think about the Matrix as a whole, as a franchise, the less I know. So, or the less sure I am about what I know. Mm-hmm. So, initially, when I came away from watching Matrix Resurrections, I enjoyed it, but I came away with mixed thoughts and feelings. And we had a brief conversation about those, I think, before we've sat down to do this review. And I've since grappled with those things and tried to make sense of them and feel a lot better about those things that I may have felt uncomfortable with initially. So, after having had a chance to marinate, I feel more positively about them, which is really interesting. I love a film that gives me something to chew on. Mm-hmm. This definitely does. And I would say that those things that I felt uncomfortable with, well, let me throw it across to you. How did you feel when you first watched it?
When I first watched it, I thought that was okay. I wanted to love this movie. I really did. I am a huge fan of the original. I was one of those people let down by the sequels. I think I'm fairly basic in my feelings on the sequels, which is Reloaded is a mixed bag. There's some great stuff, some stuff that starts to not really work, and that I wanted Revolutions to fix it, bring it home, and it did. Revolutions is my least favorite. I'll say it's my least favorite of the four. Having seen all four of them still. But the trailers for this had really intrigued me, especially the first one. I loved it. I wanted this to be just a home run. It was not a home run for me. I did enjoy the movie. I felt like it's cool to be back in this world. There are a lot of sort of, it felt a lot more confident and like they kind of knew what they were doing than Revolutions. Which to me, it just kind of lost the plot a little bit. My big gripe about Revolutions is that there's a solid hour when they're not in the Matrix. And as much as these movies are about them trying to get out of the Matrix, as moviegoers, we want to see the Matrix. So I enjoyed this movie, but I felt it was still kind of lacking. Like at the end of it, I thought, I wish there was a little more there. Like it's rebooting the franchise. And you could say it does that sufficiently well. But I thought I wanted this to kind of come in guns a-blazing in a way it didn't quite capture for me.
Yeah, and I mean, so the things that I think it did really well are the exploration of themes, mm-hmm. the building on themes that it discussed in the first film and then expanded on in 2 and 3. I do like 2 and 3, not as much as the first film, of course, which is important, groundbreaking, iconic, and extremely entertaining. So scores on all fronts. But I do like what the sequels added to the conversations around the themes that it opened up. And this one, updates everything for a modern audience, mm-hmm. in terms of the things that it's discussing our relationship with technology and that kind, and pop culture, I think, which was touched on in the earlier films, has been updated, and I think that's really interesting. But the things that fall down still, even after reflection for me, are the music, for one thing. It really misses Don Davis and his touch on the score. I don't think the music's bad in this, but you really feel that that lack of Don Davis's touch, and it makes it almost feel like the film doesn't belong in the Matrix franchise. And on top of that, the action as well, which I don't think quite hits home in the way it has done in the past. And Yuen Wu-ping was not involved in this film.
Yeah, I definitely want to touch more upon that, the action. For me, one thing, like the whole thing about it not feeling like a Matrix movie, that was a very interesting thing. When this movie starts out, one thing I think we can talk about without getting too specific is that there is a heavy meta aspect to this movie. The trailers give you a hint of that. The first trailer ending with Jonathan Groff going, after all this time, we're going back to the Matrix. The second one showing you a lot of the second trailer, I should say, showing you a lot of repeating moments from the first movie, direct visual parallels done between like then and now. This is a very meta movie. It's a movie that is very saying to the audience, we know we're rebooting a franchise and we will acknowledge that. With that comes some intentional comedy, some of which is pretty funny, but I will say it did tonally throw me. And I don't know if that's a bad thing, right? Like, I'm not saying like this has to stagnant, like make these movies exactly the same one after the other. But I do think it pushes things to a place where you're almost like, ooh, this isn't quite feeling like a Matrix movie to me, because it's a different animal in a different way. So it's like it's part of the franchise, but not quite, it doesn't feel quite at home with it. And I never thought it completely landed back into that place. Like as the movie goes on, it's treated seriously. It's not like, I don't want to say, I say there's some funny meta moments, there are, but it's not like the movie's a farce. It's a drama, but I still didn't think it felt like completely as weighty as I wanted as it went on. What did you think of the meta aspect, Kim?
Well, that was initially one of the things that I found really uncomfortable and awkward to sit in a room watching, but when I came away, I thought, well, why have they done that? Or why has Lana done that? Because Lily hasn't had an official involvement in this film.
Only one of the Wachowskis returned, we should mention, for this one.
Yeah. And one of the things is that the meta aspect or self-reflexivity has been important to the franchise since the beginning, although in this film it is much more brought to the fore and made a feature of. And that is in part a commentary on movie making and pop culture and
Hollywood.
the way we respond. I think maybe I think there's an element of religion was explored in the earlier movies, and our relationship with worship and faith, and here it's almost like asking if our faith now or what we worship is that the moving image. It certainly seems that way in our world, at least anyway, Eric, I think. That
was such an interesting thing with it. It somewhat kept me at arm's length, even as I found it very entertaining. That aspect of it. And then, of course, we should, talk a little bit more about the characters. Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss, I think it fits like a glove, these roles. It's great to see them on screen together again. They have a great chemistry there. It was interesting. I just rewatched the trilogy shortly before this. And from the first movie, of course, their relationship is a key component to it. And that is certainly the case here. I will say, I wish she was in the movie a little more. I mean, as the trailers show you, Neo is our point of view character, but she's talked about, and she's an important character in this movie. I don't want people to feel like she's not in this movie much at all. She's in it plenty, but it still feels like maybe she should have. I almost felt like there's a different version of this movie where they almost switch perspectives. I almost wanted to see coming out. What did you think of the return of Neo and Trinity and how they are depicted?
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. There was a moment through the film where I thought, what have they done? Where's her critical involvement in this? And then, by the end of the film, it makes sense. But yes, and I agree with you. There is another film where it could be switched. I don't want to say too much.
Right. Yeah. You just feel, I feel like her perspective was lacking. There's a couple moments where I was like, well, what's she thinking about right now? But
one of the things that it does do is deal with, so one of the issues raised in the trilogy is what happens when you try to awaken older people. Mm-hmm. So I think it deals with that a little bit, and the mental processes that go along with that. But it also kind of underlines this importance of love that runs throughout, which I really like the way they did that.
Mm-hmm. I really liked how it furthered the world. I mean, I think some people have almost wondered based on the trailers, like, ooh, are they going to really even acknowledge 2 and 3? Because it's like, a spoiler alert for 2 and 3, but these main characters didn't make it out of those 3 movies. And how's it going? Everything is acknowledged. Those movies happened. And I do like the furthering of the world. Like, it's a cool world. Like, the Wachowskis created this very cool world. It's great to be back in it. I like I said, I felt like this worked a lot better than the 3rd movie. And I like the information we get about what's changed since that 3rd movie. What did evolve or not evolve from the actions of Neo and Trinity in the 3rd movie. So I thought that was cool. Some interesting elements are introduced as a result of what happened in the 3rd movie. And I like that stuff a lot. There's interesting when they do callbacks or characters, it's no secret. We know that Jada Pinkett is back in this movie. It has Niobe from the 2nd and 3rd movie. There's at least one other returning character. I thought she was well used. There's another returning character at one point that seemed like it's like a goofy, it's like funny to see them, but I don't quite know if it landed. What did you think of sort of like the specific sort of callbacks and continuations of some other elements from those other movies?
So it was good to see Niobe again, and she was important to the timeline, explaining the timeline, and her links with Zion and around all of the world outside of the Matrix meant that it was important that she was there. And then I think we can mention the Merovingian because
he's in the cast list. Yeah.
And that was a strange moment. And I think it could have probably done without him, but he was funny. It was fun to see him.
Yeah, it was fun to see him, but I felt like the way they did it, I was like, maybe this should have been saved for a different, I don't know, different time, a different thing. Let's talk more about the action though, because this is a big knock against the movie, I feel, because The Matrix was so groundbreaking and incredible and made such an impression with its action scenes. Literally, it got so copied that it became passe quickly, but that's not The Matrix's fault. Because what it was doing, we hadn't seen before. Special effects wise, it was doing groundbreaking stuff. Martial arts wise, it was bringing stuff over that, of course, other movies had done, but not in America as much. It all blended together. The fact that all the actors were really doing almost all their own fighting, so dynamic, so fun, so cool. Man, I was let down by the action in this movie. It's fine, but there's very little that stands out. And I didn't like how it was shot. There's a weird sort of blurry cam thing they do that I felt I was really surprised because the action was so well shot in the first 3 movies. Say what you will about the 2nd and 3rd, the action kept delivering. Let's talk a little bit more, Kim, about what you thought about the action here.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. The action was fine. It was, you kept waiting for that moment that blew what came before out of the water, and it didn't come. And maybe that was deliberate. And you talked about that kind of blurry effect that they used, which I guess was kind of a low frame rate, slow motion. Mm-hmm. And that felt deliberate as well, and a commentary on movie making and what the Matrix did and the expectations that were held up for it. It almost feels like that they've done this to go, we're not trying to compete with ourselves, and we're not going to kowtow to demands. But one of the things that slow-mo effect or whatever it was did was remind me of David Lynch, which was really interesting because both the Wachowskis and David Lynch are kind of divisive filmmakers, and their films come out and people go, what is this? This is terrible, or this is amazing. And then at some point down the line, it's reevaluated. And that's happened with both filmmakers here. I think every single one of the Wachowskis' films has been kind of rubbished by some people at some point and then reassessed. Cloud Atlas, Speed Racer, Jupiter Ascending. And I'm not quite, both are auteurs, and either of the Wachowskis, Lana in this case, should never be kind of dismissed or undermined or undervalued, because I think this film, however it is generally received, ultimately will one day be reassessed.
Yeah, it's a great comparison with Lynch, because I was talking to someone about this recently too. It's like when Lynch came back to do Twin Peaks: The Return, some people cautioned even before. It's like, hey, everyone who thinks like this will be David Lynch picking up with new Twin Peaks in 1981 or 1992, it's been decades, and look at the stuff he's done since. It's gotten even more out there. And similarly, the Wachowskis, like, with Cloud Atlas and Jupiter Ascending and these things that have been very polarizing. Some people love them, but it's gotten less mainstream, I should say. And that's not bad, of course. I loved Twin Peaks: The Return, and it was not for everyone. It wasn't for every Twin Peaks fan. This one didn't land with me, but yes, it makes sense, of course, that as filmmakers evolve, as they change, if they come back 18 years later, it shouldn't be a carbon copy. I think the action thing is going to be very divisive, because I ultimately fall on the side of, it is a Matrix movie. It should deliver cool action. And I agree with you, by the way. Everything was deliberate. Like, that blurriness is sort of built into the text. I think there's even some dialogue about it, what we're seeing. I do think it's ultimately disappointing as a Matrix fan. There's something innately about, like, you do want that. And that is the problem with rebooting or bringing back reviving a franchise, is how much do you give them something new versus what they, versus the familiar. And here there's a couple things where it was lacking in the familiar that I just feel like it's called the Matrix. And I want people to, I'm glad she did what she wanted to do, but I also feel like I wish there was one just kick-ass action sequence.
Yeah, well, they definitely could have put some cool fight scenes in. I felt, the fight scenes were cut quickly in a way that the previous films weren't. Even whenever you think of the follow-ups, the 2 and 3, Reloaded and Revolutions. There were well cut, well edited, well choreographed fight scenes.
Yeah. So let's kind of go into overall thoughts here. One thing I'll say is, when this movie ended, because again, I did enjoy it. Like, and I was talking to some people after, and some really did not, and some did, and I enjoyed the movie. But it's funny, story-wise, it was interesting. Like, it has some commentary, to be sure, and it's got commentary on itself, absolutely. I felt like it almost felt to me like this was the streaming. It felt almost like it would have been better served if this was the Matrix streaming series, not the fourth Matrix movie, because it does reset, restart. It gives you room for more if there can be more. But because it didn't quite have a huge impact for me personally by the end, I felt like, man, it almost feels like we're setting up a streaming series that's not, as far as we know, is not happening. So that's where I felt like, this is decent, but I think it didn't live up to my expectations, because I did think like, oh, it's been so long. It's one of the most sort of cool movies of the past couple decades is the original Matrix, which completely stands on its own. I don't think there's now been 3 follow-ups. None of them can hold a candle in to that, which is a testament to that movie and also to the difficulties of sequels. So that's where when it ended, I felt like I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being back in this world. It feels like I'm supposed to watch another episode next week that doesn't exist. What are your sort of final thoughts here, Kim, on the Matrix? Not final ever. We'll be talking about it for a while.
Yeah. Well, my final thoughts are, I didn't expect, after having walked out of that screening to still be thinking lots about it now. And and I'm changing my mind on things. And that's great for me. I like thinking about movies. I agree, on the points we've talked about the fight scenes in particular.
Yeah.
And the music, that was key for me as well. And it should be a streaming series. I'd love to see that. That would have been a great move for them. I don't think it's the last we've seen of The Matrix. I think there is more to come. Probably another trilogy, as long as, it makes money.
Right. I mean, look, yeah, I do think it does show you that there's more to do here for sure. Like, I didn't come out of this thinking like there's nothing left to tap from this world. There is more, but this movie didn't, I think, land as far as like, fully fulfilling all it could, the promise of it. Though I still did enjoy aspects of it. Right now, I know it's evolving, it's changing, Kim, but if you were to rate it right now out of 5 stars, what'd you give it?
Right now, I'm giving it a safe 3 stars.
Mm-hmm. I'm also giving it a 3. I will say probably I was waffling a little bit, 2.5, 3, but because I did enjoy the film, I go to 3. Like I wouldn't tell people don't see this movie. There's enjoy if you like the world of the Matrix. I think you will find things to enjoy here, while at the same time thinking, I wish they'd done maybe a little more, little things different. So guys, that is our thoughts on Matrix Resurrections. It's coming out soon. I'm curious what everyone thinks. I'm sure we'll be talking more about it when we come back from break as we see the reaction to it. So thanks for checking this out. We'll have plenty more here at Fandom. Thanks, guys.